usually end up trying and hating my first like 5 attempts, and I'm like, why don't I just start with, I'm just gonna delete this anyway? That is not optimism. That's not a good way to start. See, I started this because there were two things that I really wanted to do. I wanted to see how I spoke and how I could fix some of the ways that I speak, because I was doing a lot of podcast guesting for a while before the pandemic, and then a little bit during the beginning and middle of the pandemic. I don't really want to say there is an end to this pandemic, but I haven't actually done anything in a couple of months. But I wanted to look at how I spoke. I wanted to do better with it. I also wanted to get familiar with YouTube and how to upload videos and just, those little things, because as a former library student, it was always drilled into our heads that we always had to know how everything worked all the time, because so much of what we were going to do was Web 2.0. I was like, that was the thing when I was in library school. Web 2.0, Web 2.0. You have to know how to do this. You have to know how to do that. Well, I have to tell you right now, we had almost nothing to do with wikis, which was like the biggest deal. We had almost nothing to do with, I can't even remember the name of the site that did all the little videos. But YouTube is still here. And while we had nothing to do with it in grad school, people are still using it. So I thought, okay, I'm going to do that. It stays big, and I really want to work on how I present myself. So watching myself talk, important, right? But then through that process, I've realized how much of this is really truly cultivated. I choose the angles, I choose what I wear, I choose how I look, I choose to edit. I can only edit so far, right? So a huge part of this process has been learning how I, as a person who has certain limitations because of my health, can use this, and how it's actually been better for me than audio, which was really surprising to me, because motion is such a problem for me. But editing things in audio has more motion than editing things in video. That was a cool surprise. Anyway, point is, I realized that I am in control of so much. If I don't like what I say, I cut it. I talk for 35, 45 minutes. I pare it down to a 22 to 25 minute video and then post it. These are good things to know, but what they don't do is they don't actually help me speak off the cuff like I want to learn to do better. It's been a really long time since I've taken a public speaking course. I did it in undergrad, and I felt like I was doing very well with it. But it has been 2 years since I have been out in the world doing public speaking and speaking off the cuff, and it's been several months since I've even had to speak to someone who wasn't even a friend about anything, because so much of what I have done lately has been like closing off avenues to working with the public, and instead focusing on my writing and things like that. So this has been very informative and has given me something to look forward to, given me goals, but has also kept me from other goals, which I think is really interesting too. In any given situation, I will always choose the thing that makes me no money over the thing that will potentially make me money. And I think that that's the other problem, is that I find these things that I really enjoy, and I don't have the luxury of having hobbies in some ways because of my health. So I still am like working on how do I get to be a functional person who can have a 9 to 5 which I'm working out with a neurologist. And that ends up being like, okay, well, I can write, but I can't really like necessarily work on someone else's schedule. So I write these things, and then I work with someone who understands and knows me, and then I work on my own towards projects that I will eventually pitch, and then I have to learn how to pitch and all this other stuff. So yeah, but then I have this, which is like my hobby. And yes, I do have like referral links, but I don't get a lot of views, and of those views, I get even less people using the referral links, right? So if I'm very lucky, I make about, I would say the highest that I've made is like $3 or $4 off of a video. And it wasn't even the video, actually. It was just promoting the video and the author retweeting it. And then the least amount I'll make is like 12 cents. And that is as long as it has existed. So yeah, and I'll choose that thing. I'll be like, let me do that thing, even though I have these other things in my life that like I have had in my life for a long time, or that I wanted to have done or whatever. I'll be like, oh, I got to make this video tonight because those books drop tomorrow. That's why I'm here right now. And so to me, this stuff is really fascinating because it tells me about me. However, it presumes that you, the person watching this, is interested in me and how my life works. When really, you could be here just for me talking about books that are about to come out. Wait, there's more. But why else would you be here? Because I have such low views, except that you already know who I am. Almost. Okay. For the most part, people who are here already know who I am. So they have an investment in me as either a person or a brand, right? The polyamorous librarian, and like books and want to hear about those books or want to hear me. And then there are the outliers, the people who, like that one post, saw one of their favorite authors comment on a thing and say, or one of their favorite authors follows me and retweeted it, or saw me tag them and retweeted a thing, and then either they click on the video or they just click on the referral link that was in the post. So either you just sat through all of that, or you are now skipping ahead to the part where I talk about the books. Sorry, I'm going to talk a little bit about Doctor Who. Because of my motion issues, and because motion makes me really, really sick, I haven't watched a lot of Doctor Who over the past couple years, but I have been like sort of following as much news as possible. I did watch one episode for the Hugos last year, so I have seen one Jodie episode, which was kind of uneven. I enjoyed her, and I enjoyed about half of the story, but I've heard that that's kind of the problem. Is that it's not her, it's a lot of the writing and the showrunner and the choices being made. And it was interesting to see how the opinions that I have read about were reflected in basically that one episode. Oh well. But there was an announcement this last week. I feel like it was over the weekend. Within the past couple days. New Doctor, so excited. Ncuti Gatwa from Sex Education, who plays Eric, which, yay, I love Eric. I love Sex Education. It is a wonderful show. It was actually a scene I saw of Eric talking to his dad that got me into the show. I'd been hearing about it, and then someone posted that clip and I cried, and I still cry just thinking about it. It's fine. Yeah. So I watched, when I finally felt like, okay, I feel well enough to check out shows, I started watching the show. It's amazing. I had no idea Gillian Anderson was in it. I'm sure I did it maybe at some point. I don't know. It's really hard to know. Like, for a long time, I didn't want to know about television shows because I was so jealous that it felt like people could do this thing that I couldn't, right? That was a huge part of coming to terms with the changes in my life. And yeah, so for a long time, if someone said this show is cool, I'm like, could we talk about something else? Anything else, please? I think that's actually one of the reasons why I got like so involved in polyamory. Because before that, I was so involved in books and television, and most of my friends don't talk about books with me. But they would all talk about polyamory. And I couldn't talk to my nerd friends about all the movies that they were watching and the TV shows that they were watching and all the things that we had bonded over before. I had friends who were like sending me messages like, I wish you could watch Westwood with me. And I couldn't. I am getting so far away from books. But I wanted to say that I'm really excited for the next Doctor. And if only they weren't shaking hand holding, not purposely shaking, although there's some of that too. Hand holding the camera all the time. Doctor Who, I would still be watching the heck out of it. I'm talking a lot. And this is the first time today that I haven't felt completely awful. And I think it's just allergies. So I showered and everything. So that probably washed something out of my system. Thank goodness. I felt awful all day. I'm a little dizzier than usual. My neck's a little stiffer, which is usually part of it. Chicken, egg, not sure. But I'm just really excited. So I got a little dolled up that way. It was either this or the super fancy Doctor Who dress, and I was not feeling well enough for that. Books. I know you want to talk about books. And also, I would have worn this anyway because I am talking about a book that comes out, I guess by the time you watch it, it'll be today, which is the 10th of May, 2022, called Someone in Time. Isn't that cute? That is cute. It is a collection of short stories. They are time travel stories with romantic elements. They are not romance stories. They are time travel stories with romantic elements. And let me tell you, after reading the short story collection that was like all of those urban fantasy, here's stuff from all these characters that already pre-existed. This was such a breath of fresh air, and it just goes to show you the difference between people who are writing short stories to write short stories and people who are writing in a pre-existing canon to, keep building on to like an existing, mythos or whatever. And I feel really mean saying that, but there is an art to short stories. And that book didn't have it, and this one does. And I feel really mean saying that. And I'm like trying to learn how to be authentic on here. So there have been things that have bothered me, and I've tried to rein them in while still being honest about them and not being my usual stompy self. Because a lot of the anger or upset that I've had about things have context in my own life. I don't have time in a 20 to 25 minute video to talk about all the context that gets me to my anger, right? So this is a collection of stories. There are a ton of authors. Some of them I've heard of, some of them I haven't. Shauna Maguire's in there, so of course that was the first draw for me. I've been on a huge Maguire kick. I'm picking up my copy of Seasonal Fears, which I talked about in another video. It came out last week. but I talked about it months ago when I read The Ark. This short story collection has everything from sweet to like odd and weird and cool, and just so many different things in terms of how time travel could work. Some are time travel machines, some are just there, some are very fantastical, in the sense of like, you know, like actual like fantasy time travel. Some are, you know, very scientific, academic scientific. Yeah, and I really love the diversity of ideas and time periods. And there's, I mean, when I say diversity, I mean so much diversity in terms of the time periods, the people who are writing it, the different kinds of love. This story has a ton of queer romance in it, which is great. I don't think I've ever seen a non-YA collection be this diverse in terms of queer relationships. But there's some het stuff in there too for the rest of you, I guess. And yeah, just really just all over. I mean, there's one story that has a like a machine that's supposed to like take you into your own head to your own past lives, which is so cool. And I really loved that story, and there's so much about it that I would love to discuss, but I'm not going to because the book hasn't even come out yet. And also because short stories are these beautiful things that are meant to be discovered. You know, the difference between what happens when you put a short work and a long work together is that you have to read them differently. You have to write them differently. You really have to write them differently. You can't take a novel and just condense it and have the same thing going on. You just can't. You absolutely cannot. So the one thing about this book that I did not love is that it's all these great new stories. At the end is this older award-winning story, which is really interesting. And honestly, I did read the introduction. I would have liked to have seen more of, I guess, an explanation as to why it was there, because all the other stories seem to be so much newer. But like, why the inclusion of this particular story? It is a really cool story. It is queer. I don't remember the introduction saying like it inspired the whole collection or whatever, but for one thing, it's much more explicit than the rest of the stories. It's much more, like, I hate to give things away, but it is much more triggery. Like, there are things in there that upset me, and I wasn't expecting it because the rest of the stories were all on the same level, and then this story was on a completely different level in terms of where the writing was. And I was thinking to myself, oh, this is interesting. I can compare, I can contrast. But all the while, the title of the story was really getting to me because it has what is now well known to be a slur. So I'm reading this book, which is, you know, incredibly progressive in that it has a lot of space for queer people, has a lot of space for diverse voices, authors writing from all sorts of different cultural perspectives. And then the last story in the book is like called Time Gypsies. And admittedly, it wasn't written in 2022, but it has nothing to do with the Roma people. And I legitimately have not heard a person use that word like in a really long time, other than someone saying it, you know, for whatever, and then someone else saying, hey, did you know that like there are people that don't like that word to be used? And someone would either say, oh, I didn't know that, thanks for letting me know, or F you, I can say whatever I want. Anyway, it was really strange to me because the story is not old. Like, we're not talking about a story that was like, we're gonna, put the first award winning time travel story with romantic elements into our book, and it's, it's the story that won like the first Hugo from the second Hugo Award ceremony. You know what I mean? Like, no. It was really weird to me because like then I went through, like I looked through the good and the bad, and nobody said anything. Like, I'm just sitting here going, am I just so used to being around a bunch of like people who say like, oh, you know what, like, let's not say that thing, let's not say that thing, let's not say that thing, there are zillions of words in the English language, let's pick a different one for that. Like, and it comes up in the story and I'm like, okay, well, that makes sense, like that language definitely was there then. But like, what about now? I don't know. I'm done, I swear. The other book I read this past week was Siren Queen. I said I was looking forward to it. I didn't know what I was saying. I was a fool. I should have been looking twice as much forward to it because it was twice as good as I expected, and I had incredibly high hopes. The author's name is Niveau. She is Viet American, and she recently won the Hugo for Empress of Salt and Fortune, I believe, which I think I voted for. Pretty sure. So good. It was really good. If I didn't vote for it, it was definitely in my like top two because it was really good. Anyway, so this story is really neat. It is about it's about Hollywood before all the code stuff came in, and before everybody had to, before the everybody started turning everybody in for communism and all that. So it's about this young girl who lives in Los Angeles. She's Chinese. Her family runs like a laundry service, and she loves going to the movies. And she basically stumbles her way onto a set one day, and that starts her on her career to becoming an actress. But the extra cool thing about this is that it is set in this world where magic exists. Now, the thing that feels so different about it is that the magic does not necessarily have like a system per se, in the way that like everything else has a magic system. It feels very naturally unnatural. It's like the everybody has sort of their own types of like magic that is cultural, or it's almost like folk things, but they exist and they work, and they are maybe tied to culture or location or anything, but they're like ghosts and all sorts of like it's interesting in that you legitimately can't tie it down to anything. You never know what is going to happen because there is no way to be like, like in a regular like magic system. You can just be like, okay, well, the energy that you put in is the energy that you can put out or whatever. Or if I say, like this spell, this is going to happen. It's not like that at all. There are monsters, there are things that feel like metaphor, but they're real. And it's so. So the word that I really want to use here is vibey. And there's this like theory that I have that I've been talking about with like my roommate and everything lately, which is that I put this on Twitter too. Basically, the like new music, new art, by art I mean like mostly writing. I don't really follow like the art scene, but and especially like queer stuff, there's this sort of movement in a lot of ways away from well, from queerness. There's a push away from resilience, like, and basically towards joy, right? We don't want all of our stories to be just queer pain, right? And this is a big thing in the trans community. It's like nobody wants to see trans pain being the story all the time. And on top of that, or interlaced with it really, is narratives of people of color. Again, no desire to see the only narrative being portrayed over and over again is one of pain. And so you're seeing a lot more joy in stories being told. And on top of that, you have a lot of writers, especially, calling for discussions on structure and basically a not only a comparison but a tearing down of Western writing culture supremacy, which is a really weird phrase, and I don't think that that is a quote of anybody, but it's really how that works. Is like, what is everyone taught in school? Oh, stories go exactly like this. This is how many acts they have. This is how the story goes with the climax and the resolution and all this other stuff. And there are authors, especially Asian authors. I've seen a lot of Asian authors lately on Twitter pushing back on that, which I think is so cool, and are talking about traditional structures in other places and how they work and how their stories are written that way. And I love it. I think it's great. What I think that it's going to end up doing is that you're going to see all of these people and their intersections, especially, you're going to see them writing these works the way that they want to write these works. And it's going to cause a slight shift where the popularity of it is going to filter back into the, like, basically white writers. And I think it's happening in music. I think a lot of the songs I've been hearing lately have been very chorus heavy, very hook heavy, and the verses are like, they barely exist. And I think that people are like, oh, that's a vibe, and I'm like, yeah, it's a vibe, but like, what is that like? Like, you see what that is, right? That's a rejection of structure. Like, your song has to go like this, over what do I really want? What I really want is to feel good. I want the part of the song that makes me feel good. And I feel like this is going to happen in writing too. So I'm thinking about this book in terms of like queerness, but the magic in it to me feels like you can't get a handle on it. That is so different from all of these like urban fantasy books, all these supernatural television shows, which work their asses off to have a magic system that everybody can understand, that the characters have to follow. There are rules to these things. Those rules can't be broken unless it's sweeps week. You know what I mean? And that's what I really love. It's not what I really love. Well, it's one of the many things I loved about this book. The writing is fantastic. It feels great. The cool thing about the book is, like, I'm always talking about flow. The book does not flow the way that like I expect a book to flow. it, but it doesn't need to, because the main character is not there to like hand you a very flowing novel. And in fact, if she did, I feel like there'd be a problem with it because it wouldn't match the main character. And I love that about it. I super duper love it. It's got these really interesting characters that you, I don't want to get into that. I want you to discover them for yourself. But yeah, it's about Hollywood. It's about monstrosity. It's about what makes people monstrous. It's about history and Hollywood. It's about racism. It's about queerness. It's about a lot of things, honestly, without feeling like it's about a lot of things. It mostly just feels like someone's story, and it's very personal. And it feels like a gift, which I love. It feels like you're being given a gift by somebody who couldn't have done that at the beginning of the story. And that's beautiful. Yeah, so Siren Queen. So yes, I probably have been talking a ridiculously long amount of time. Need to cut this down. Need to get it posted, because today is the day everything comes out. I was not feeling well, so couldn't do it faster. Also, just slowing down on the reading. I did read the third Love Everlasting comic from Tom King and Elsa Chartier, I think is her name. I know it when I have it written down, but today is not my day to basically do anything right. And wow, I am so mad that I have to. I'm not the kind of person who buys single comics. I will wait for that trade. And yeah, I am hating reading this month to month. Is it even months? Or like, it feels like months. And it makes it, because it's coming out on Substack, it's coming out faster for people who pay. And I'm just like, no, I can't afford it. Just give me the whole can I just pay you now and get the whole thing? Like, it's killing me because I like 3 out of 12 is not enough to know where the story's going, especially with Tom King. And I also read the new Reckless trade, which is, I believe, called The Ghost in You. I really like Reckless. It's interesting because it's gone over a really long, what feels like a very long period of time now. And it feels softer than where it started now, which is good for the characters. And I'm thinking that when it ends, and I do think it'll end probably not the next book, but maybe the book after. It's just a sense I have, and I'm not the only person who's said that. But maybe not. Maybe it'll go on for a really long time, or maybe they'll go backwards and they'll be like, well, back this year, which is totally fine. But I mean, like, linearly, I feel like maybe there's some sort of wrap up coming up. Chronologically, I think I meant to say. I don't know. This is a good thing, and I'm really excited for the characters. But when that happens, I'm going to probably reread the whole series in a row to like look at that character development, because reading them as they come out again, like, I'm not meant to do this. Why am I doing this to myself? I should only read things that are completely done. That is what's best for me, especially now because I'm reading so many things in between instead of doing what I used to do, which is just shoosh all the way through. I also read Lady Baltimore, Wait, I don't think that I finished it. I think I fell asleep. Oops. I did not read Lady Baltimore. Okay. It's been a really long time. I have to edit this, and I will talk to you soon.